Introduction to Prlgl. This is a week 3, chapter 3 guide where we look at the inner workings of a law office. Some of that is not new to a few of you, and it is very new to others. So read chapter 3 before you listen to this. Have the slides available for notes. Start to think of the terms that are offered here and some of the concepts, because they're going to be things that you're going to have to deal with in a very short period of time when you start to head out to seek internships and jobs, and it'll be upon you before you know it. As we've already established, most paralegals are employed in private law firms. The size and structure of the law firm affects the working environment for a paralegal. And a law firm will have specific policies relating to procedures, employment conditions, all that kind of stuff. There isn't a one-size-fits-all for any of these. Many of your employment opportunities may turn out to be sole proprietorships. That's the simplest form of business. It's one individual who owns the business, so one lawyer owns the practice. The sole proprietor is entitled to any of the profits made by that firm. They're also personally liable for the debts and obligations of the firm. They practice alone. There's one lawyer. They may have several people in their support staff, including you as a paralegal, but they have one lawyer. That's called a sole practitioner, a sole proprietorship with a sole practitioner. A partnership is generally referred to as as more than one person, and there could be multiple lawyers working together as partners. They are jointly and severally liable for the losses of the partnership, and then they are also entitled to the profits equally. Now, there's different forms of that, and I'm not going to get into that here. You'll have a whole class on business organizations, so I won't even talk about limited liability partnerships. But partnerships are a term that you will hear thrown around. A lot of times, what they really refer to is not, in fact, a partnership, but the business is organized as a professional corporation or an LLC, limited liability company, to protect those people from their personal liability. And again, you'll have a whole course on this, but if you're working in a organization that has multiple lawyers who are also owners of the organization, then it's going to be probably the corporation or the LLC. They may still, in fact, call themselves partners, so just know that. Now, every firm's going to have a different setup, and I've alluded to the fact that a lot of our graduates have found their way into management of some kind in the firm. They may manage other paralegals, they may manage the support staff over a particular area of the practice, or they may help manage the entire firm, do all the business and office management aspects of the firm. Some of you may be in law office management this semester, and so you'll get a really good in-depth taste of that, and the rest of you will have that course at some point. We'll break all that down in much greater detail. But the things you need to keep in mind are that only the lawyers can be the owners. Only the lawyers can take on the liability. Only the lawyers can split directly the profits, and that's by law. You should be aware, and most of you are aware from your experience, that performance evaluations, being able to demonstrate that you've done the job is very important. You should always know how you're being rated. You should know what the expectations are for advancement, for salary increases, for bonuses. And you should keep track of your own performance. You should know. Michelle Weghorst is my paralegal at the end of the year, when we were looking at bonuses, she was able to come in and say, and she knew as well as we did, how many hours she billed, how much she participated in generating income for the firm. And you should know that. You should know what your productivity is. How much of your time is spent on billable work as opposed to administrative work. For instance, billable work is the work that is directly attributable to income. It's billed to a client, and the client pays that bill, and that helps us pay the light bill and the rent and the salaries of the firm. As opposed to, there are a lot of things that we can't bill directly to a client. It's true in any business. But if you find yourself spending more and more hours on administrative things, non-billable things, why is that? Is that because of you, or is that because of work that's being assigned to you? We had that once in my career that I recall, where someone's time was being manipulated or used by one of the other partners to do things that we couldn't directly bill for. We couldn't get income out of that. And not only that, it was taking away from the time that that individual could be used to bill or to work on cases that would help us generate income. So you should know that as much as they know that. Keep track. Be accountable to yourself and be accountable to the firm. There's all kinds of stuff covered in the book that we'll get into greater detail with when we get to the ethics portion of the course, like confidentiality and the importance of keeping files secure and things confidential. So read that and pay attention to it, because it's not going to be something that you won't take forward. It's going to be something you're going to take forward in a very big way throughout this course and every other course that you take in this program. The book goes into great detail about the different types of firms, and it's like any other business. We have local, we have regional, we have the Heil Royster firm in Peoria is based in Peoria, but they're regional. They have offices, I think, 5 different Illinois cities, and then maybe Tampa. I know there's another one somewhere, some other out of state. There are multinational firms. There are firms that have offices in Chicago, New York, LA, and in Europe and across the globe. Depends on their business. So you'll find law firms from that sole proprietor, very local, to multinational, to multi-state, to just like any other business. All different sizes and shapes for different reasons. The textbook also talks about client trust accounts, and that's a term that you should get used to, because that's one that comes up when lawyers and paralegals get in trouble. As a lawyer who has money that belongs to the client, you are required to have a client trust account. A retainer, if you've ever paid a lawyer a retainer for a divorce, for instance, has to go in the client trust account until that money is earned by the lawyer. That's where the funds are held until they go back to the client or they're earned. They may only be used for expenses related to the client. The interest in Illinois, the way it's set up, the interest for that account goes to a fund that the state controls. It's supposed to help compensate people who may have been harmed by a lawyer. I don't get that interest. The client doesn't get that interest, and that money is held, and we have to account for it separately. Lawyers get in trouble when they commingle that money, when they don't keep track of that money, or even when they can account for every penny, they've used that money inappropriately. So that's a term you're going to get to be more familiar with in other courses, but definitely know what a client trust account is. Know that you have to bill and keep time for your efforts. We had our paralegals keep time every minute of every day. And if you're doing billable hour work, that hourly time gets billed to someone, a client. That's how we make our money. Again, something that we will get into in greater detail, but if you ever received a bill from a lawyer, you know that hopefully it was broken down in that way. There are ethical obligations regarding billing. You know, we are only supposed to bill one person for a minute that we're doing work. I can't bill 5 people for the same time. There's also an ethical rule that we'll cover from the Code of Professional Responsibility that requires that our time or our billing be reasonable. And there's factors that we'll cover when we discuss that about what is reasonable. Communications. You know, it's good to send that client a monthly bill to let them know where they stand, to let them know where they stand both on what they owe you and what if they have a retainer, what their retainer balance is. We have a duty to keep clients reasonably informed about the progress of their case, and sending them a detailed bill that outlines everything that I've done or you've done as my paralegal on a case over a given month, including dates and the amount of time and specific summary of detail of the things we did and who we did them with, that keeps the client informed. It's something we need to do. The book talks about some things for social media for communicating with clients. I'm really wary of any of that. I don't think that it's smart. I don't think it's smart that you text with your client. I really don't. Make it formal with an email. Watch for confidentiality. Watch that you're not sharing things that other people could interpret or read or get a hold of. You don't want to send text because, as you know, your phone's laying on the table. Anybody can read it. You want to be secure in those conversations. The book also covers effective communication. We're going to hit that over and over and over again. But read that. Start thinking in those terms, because you know what? You are going to communicate with a lot of people on a lot of things. You will communicate with a lot of clients. So it's important that you establish communication equality, that you plan for time, that you set an agenda. You fine-tune your speaking skills. You cultivate listening skills. You watch for body language. You put note-taking in perspective. Note-taking isn't transcribing or writing down everything somebody says. It's making notes and then going back, and then after the conversation's over, recalling what was said and then fleshing it out in a memo to your boss. Recognize the role of criticism and keep it constructive. Aim for satisfactory closure, and then commit to communicate. Don't let things hang. Online communications, email is standard, right? We don't mail letters. We send an email. They've largely replaced printed inter-office and external communications. Apply professional standards to email. Don't use text speak. Don't use informal things. Make it very formal, okay? And the book gives you some tips there that you should pay attention to. Some of you are going to need to practice that from just communications you've sent me so far. You send me an email that looks like you texted it from your phone, and maybe you typed it out from your phone, but it looks like a text. No caps, no formal introduction, no reference to what you're talking about, reference to your class that you're contacting me about. Get in the practice of doing those things. Some of the other things covered in the book gets a little deep in the woods about the actual law office politics and culture. I mean, that's no different than anything you've experienced in any other employment. These are things you'll have to navigate. But the one thing I'll say that's unique to the law office, and something that you'll hear me say over and over, if you're not working in an environment where they treat you as, you would like to be treated, if it's not a place that's being operated professionally, there's plenty of places that will be operated professionally. So in other words, nobody deserves to or needs to be yelled and screamed at. We don't need excess drama. The law is complicated and stressful enough. So as long as you're coming to work on time, being focused, doing your best, acknowledging the code of professional responsibility, doing things in a diligent manner on time to the best of your ability. If there's something that comes up or you make a mistake, well, so be it, and we can rectify that. But nobody needs to be screamed at or yelled at or treated inappropriately. So when those circumstances arise, and sometimes they do, I say, dust off your resume and go get another job. So in summary, law firms can be organized in sole proprietorships, partnerships, limited liability partnerships, professional corporations, LLCs. Each law firm has a unique system of management and lines of authority, and just like any other employee or employer, you'll get used to that. You have to know your specific responsibilities and expectations and keep track of and be able to justify that you're doing those things. Be an advocate for yourself. Law firm files include client files, work product files, form files. Confidentiality is the major concern and the major fundamental policy for every law firm and every lawyer and paralegal. A major concern of any law firm is to have a clear policy on fee arrangements and efficient billing procedures, including communicating those bills in a regular and consistent manner. Since attorneys have a duty to keep clients informed, billing's a good way to do that, or regular and informed billing, but also for paralegals to keep the lawyer in the loop and make sure the lawyer stays in contact with the client, especially in those practice areas like family law, work comp, personal injury, where the paralegal has a lot of contact with the client. Firms need clear policies about communications within the firm and about how the firm presents itself to the outside world. Each office has its own culture, and it's shaped largely by the attitudes of the firm's owners and the qualities they look for when hiring people. You will hear me say when you start to go out to look at internships and employment, pay attention when you walk in for your interview. Really dial in and pay attention. Listen, look, take it all in. Is the place a mess? Is there a lot of chaos? Are people yelling and screaming? Are they complaining? Or is it professional? Pay attention. And you can see, hear, and feel culture in a law firm a lot of times. And, pay attention to that. Trust yourself, just like you would in any other job. You've gone into interviews before where you've been there a few minutes thinking, ooh, how the hell do I get out of this interview because I don't want to work here? That doesn't change with law firms. So we'll talk about that more when you get closer to the internship and employment. This is the week 3 podcast, or guide, for Introduction to Paralegal. Stay well.